So, good evening. This is another video now, kind of in a very short order here. This week has been quite interesting, and the topic here has a reason I brought this up is basically threefold. For one is I have come across two channels on YouTube which deal with Kaliningrad. One is a Russian citizen who used to live in Germany, in Mannheim, and he recently relocated to Kaliningrad with his wife, and he speaks German. He made only 2 videos, and I think the first video he made got like 500 or 600 views in a 2 or 3 span, 2 to 3 months span. And the second video he is barely up to 100 views on it. And that kind of doesn't surprise me, because Kaliningrad or Königsberg, Prussia, East Prussia, is not a hot topic for videos unless you have some roots in that area, say like as a German or Prussian who had family there and they were expelled out of there after or in 1945 when the Russians occupied this, or the Soviet Union occupied this area over there. And then the other one is a Russian person, Russian citizen, who I don't know if it is male or female, who has titled her videos "Walking in Kaliningrad." There is no spoken words, no narratives, no nothing. It is just the sounds of the person walking with the ambient sounds you have in that area. These videos are very interesting, but then again, they're getting very little viewing on the similar to my channel here. And it was interesting to see these videos because he or she is walking through Kaliningrad, and it gave me a better understanding. You can see the inner city, as with many European cities, was basically heavily destroyed during the war, but the outer parts of the city, the older single-family homes and larger estate homes and villas and that sort of stuff, all survived and have been rebuilt. And then, of course, during the Soviet time, many of the buildings, Khrushchev buildings, I guess that's what the Russians refer this to, had been built there, and the inner city was somewhat rebuilt too. Some of it to reflect the original, Königsberg, and but the castle is gone, so that was demolished. That is not there, but you can see it. It looks, when he or she is walking through Königsberg, through Kaliningrad. This is all recent here. Today, yesterday, every day he or she makes a video. You can see it, the roads, especially the ones in the outer city, in the old parts of cobblestones or regular asphalt type roads, and they are pretty, especially the asphalt roads they got a lot of potholes. They are not well maintained. The sidewalks are sinking. The border stones on the sidewalk, they're pretty, they go up and down. Other than that, you get the feeling that Russia, Putin, has not put a lot of money into Kaliningrad compared to other regions. Sure, they have the restaurants now, and they did here and there things, but I think in the overall condition, it probably reflects more the situation of what you would find in Siberia, like in Surgut,
or in Perm, in these kind of cities, with the maintenance of the city and the roads compared to our standards, what we're used to. A large country like here, the United States, we got roads with potholes too, but they're usually trying to fix them, and we're paying quite some money for our road maintenance here via our car registrations. Then the next thing is, so this was one part which struck me, and again, these videos, especially walking in Kaliningrad, I'm going to put the link to the 2 YouTube channels here in my section here, for the, not the comment section, but the description of the video, so you can take a look at it. These videos are also getting very few views, 10 views, 20 views, 50 views, 100 views, some of them only 5 views. And there seems to be a reluctance, and this is something I'm gathering more and more, of YouTube to push videos which focus or deal with Kaliningrad, Königsberg, and East Prussia. It is not I'm complaining about it. I mean, these topics I present here are very specific and probably not of much interest to the broad YouTube viewership, so to speak. In Königsberg, in Prussia in itself, is not a highly searched topic, on YouTube, not just on YouTube, but Google, in that sense, compared to today's events, what's happening, and names, and that kind of stuff. So that is, for me, it is not a surprise. If we ever going to get to 100 subscribers on this channel here, that will be a lot. That probably will take some time if we can get that many people interested in these topics. The reason why I brought this up was there was a news posting. I forgot now which newspaper was it. May have been the Pravda, which stated, and I read that somewhere else too in a Western newspaper, that Finland and other countries who are routing air traffic over the Baltic Sea next to the Oblast Kaliningrad, which is East Prussia basically, and Lithuania, and that little corridor they have to Poland, is that these commercial flights are getting disrupted because of blackouts of the GPS systems in that area, in that vicinity. And they're expecting or suspecting that Russia is behind it, and they are actually using, interference technology out of Kaliningrad or the Oblast Kaliningrad to basically black out the GPS data. They scramble that with interference signals in that, which is not very difficult to do. A few kilowatts of power in these particular frequencies can black out the whole system, and the commercial flights will have a problem because their entire navigation system will go out, and they would have to revert over to manual flying by compass and that sort of thing, and beacons and radio beacons, the way we used to do this. And this is starting to be a discontent on those countries there, and that is just putting more fuel on the fire, so to speak. The
reports were that this has been going on now for about 8 months. And we will have to see, and so this is all accumulating, and there's a potential there that this could blow up one day. The idea of Finland and the other countries was to basically isolate the Kaliningrad Oblast, or East Prussia, by sea, air, and by train, because you have the trains coming from Belarus through Lithuania into Kaliningrad Oblast to supply that state, basically. That would put the people who lived there, who have found a home there now, this has been resettled in between 1945 and 1950. So these folks who were born in that time frame, the first settlers' children's, they're now in their 70s and closer to probably 80, 70, 75, 80 years old. And then, of course, all of their offspring, primarily, has been born there. So this whole thing is a highly difficult subject to deal with. I've made my statements before about this region, or about East Prussia. Now, the other report which came up was a TV documentary in Germany of one of the public broadcast stations there. And they have brought out or dug up allegations that Chancellor Helmut Kohl, the German Chancellor, and his foreign minister, Hans-Dietrich Genscher, back in 1991, shortly before the Soviet Union collapsed, but Germany had been already reunified. That must have been then after October 3rd, 1990, and somewhere of August of 1991. In this time frame, a high-ranking Russian general, or Soviet general of the Red Army at that time, has supposedly made an offer on behalf of Gorbachev to sell Kaliningrad Oblast with its people. You have to think about it. You have to get a hold of this to let that sink in. For, in today's money, about 50 billion euros, which is nothing. On today's scale, it would have been a very manageable amount of money. The reason being was that the Soviet Union needed desperately, in this case it would have been West German Deutschmarks or US dollars, in order to survive and stay off the collapse. And the story is, what they're saying is that Helmut Kohl was ready to accept that deal, and Hans-Dietrich Genscher was the one who basically objected to it, and because they had a coalition, he threatened Kohl with the end of the coalition, which would have ended Kohl's chancellorship at that point in 1991. Now, I believe that this would have been a major obstacle. For one is, you had Poland now in that equation, and the question would have been how France, Britain, and the United States would have reacted to such an offer. In this case, then, if we play this thought through, say like East Prussia or Kaliningrad Oblast would have become part of the reunified Germany, you would have had that corridor situation again, which we had after 1918, where this was Polish territory. You had to travel through Polish territory to get to East Prussia, to Königsberg. And that wasn't really fully resolved until 1939, when the whole World War II started with the Poland offensive. And, then the corridor kind of disappeared. This was a hot-button contentious issue back then, from 1919 and 1920 on, until 1939, until the war broke out and Poland was conquered, basically. That caused a lot of problems because you're basically traveling through West Prussia and through Pomerania. And parts of West Prussia had been awarded to Poland. This is the region between East Prussia and Pomerania to the south of Danzig, Gdansk today. And so this caused a whole bunch of issues, and we would have had a very similar situation then going forward. So I do not know if this is true or if it is not true. Now, the displaced people, Germans, Prussians, German Prussians, out of this area from 1945 on, they all settled for the bigger part in West Germany, or in the western sector at that point. And they formed organizations of the displaced people, Landsmannschaften, that's what that was called. So the Pomeranians had one, the Schlesier had one, the Upper Schlesier had one, Schlesiers, the West Prussians and the East Prussians had one. So, and these were big organizations because they had a lot of members. Maybe 3-4 million Germans had resettled back into Western Germany, and they were establishing themselves. And those groups now have only very few original members. You have to remember this is such a long time ago. So someone who was still born shortly, basically left there as a newborn child in 1945 or 1944, would be today 80 years old. So, of course, anyone born before them, most of the people who really lived there and were parents and, were fully engaged in it, adults, they have pretty much passed away in the last 10, 20 years. So now we have a very small group of those, who had ancestors there, you have to say today, or the family originated from East Prussia. And they are now, of course, stunned and shocked about that supposedly secretive deal which was offered by the Soviet Union or Russian general. That wasn't offered by Gorbachev, but by a Russian general, high-ranking Red Army general. So I do not know what the truth is in this, but they are now looking at this, and it gives them new hope. And then if this comes now to some form of an exchange here, which I doubt it kind of will, but it is possible, who knows, then the question is, what are we going to do with the people who have lived there now? And are we going to displace those Prussians, the Prussians today with Russian origins, and then the few descendants, if they want to move back to Prussia, which won't be a lot of people. You can see this again here by the views and how many views these channels get, which deal with Prussia today, or Kaliningrad Oblast. And that's a big question. Do you want to expropriate the buildings from those people who have lived there now for so long? And what are the ramifications in this. I mean, how do you want to think about this? I don't know. That's why I've said this for us is this we were the sovereigns over that area at a time when we had that political system as a monarchy sanctioned by the Vatican and the Holy Roman Empire of German nations. Until 1806, it was the Duchy of Prussia and then the Kingdom of Prussia, which we were the sovereigns of until 1918, when it all ended, and then Prussia became a state as it's, in the Weimar Republic. So for us, we of course remain neutral in this because we do not want a entanglement where people think is that there's a re-emergence of a monarchist movement, which is not really there because monarchist topics, unless they involve gossip of some of the ruling houses, or not ruling houses, but of the houses which have still representative functions in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, not Germany, but in Belgium, Holland, England, of course, Spain, Portugal, to a certain extent Greece, unless there is some scandalous stuff, Monaco, of all places, of course, unless there is scandalous stuff involved, sex involved, betrayal, and cheating, that kind of, it's all that celebrity gossip kind of stuff. No one really cares about this because we politically are not that important anymore. England might be somewhat an exception in this, but or Great Britain. But the rest of Europe it's purely ceremonial. And so we have no opinion in this, but for the better part is we probably will have to find some form of a solution in it. I doubt it that Putin is going to revisit a offer to sell Königsberg to the Federal Republic of Germany today. I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. And it is more based on our overall climate, what we have, and it would complicate it. If we're going to cut off Königsberg or Kaliningrad Oblast, then we're probably going to see a reaction where we isolate it, where we don't allow any type of, supply trains or, that kind of stuff in and out of Kaliningrad Oblast. Then there will be some consequences, and the military consequences would be coming from Belarus because they were trying to break through that Lithuanian corridor, which is probably 30 or 50 miles wide at the most, to reestablish, and that could split then Lithuania and the three Baltic states up from that corridor we have into Poland to travel through there. And that would be kind of, so your worst case scenario, we would wind up with a war type situation where Belarus and the Russian Federation together then are going to attack NATO in that corridor to break through to Kaliningrad Oblast. That would be a most likely scenario of what we would see. And then who knows in which direction this is going to go. So this is something I would be concerned about. I don't think that Putin is going to sit there and is going to do nothing. If you put a sea blockade up with Navy ships or whatever you want to do to block off Königsberg, Kaliningrad harbor, for supply ships to come in, Russian supply ships to supply their people there, that's when it starts. It's gonna come from Belarus.
Most of the supplies Kaliningrad and Kaliningrad Oblast needs for their daily life and for their facilities, everything for the population there and for the state to work, comes by train from Russia through Belarus into through Lithuania, through the corridor into Kaliningrad. And of course you can just cut the railroad connection. That would be one thing. You block the air traffic and you put a sea blockade up, then Kaliningrad is isolated. And that would be a very bold move, and it probably will have indeed a reaction. That would be my guess. And then this could get very hot, this whole situation over there. That is something I don't hope for. Now, the other thing is what most Germans know Königsberg for is the Königsberger Klopse, which are in the original recipe were basically Kaliningrad meatballs in a cream sauce with capers. And you usually eat them with potatoes. The meat is veal, chopped meal or ground meal. Put some onions in there. You put an old roll in there, like a Kaiser roll, and you put you soak it in milk first, and then you mix this all together. You put salt and pepper in it, and you put sardines in it, 1 or 2 sardines, or you could use anchovies. The anchovies, it's more like a anchovy. It would work probably better. And then you mix this all through, and then the meatballs, you make balls, and you put them in boiling beef broth, really good beef broth, and then you let them simmer for 20 to 25 minutes. So they're not boiled or fried or any of that stuff. They're boiled in beef broth. And then you take them out and you make the caper, cream sauce, and you serve it. That is a fairly old recipe. That was the original recipe with the anchovies and the veal, the ground veal. Today we use a mixed pork and beef, or you can use a combination pork, beef, and veal, but the traditional one is with veal. This is what most people know in Germany of Königsberg when you ask them. Is the Kaliningrad meatballs. The Russians have something similar. I forgot what you call it. The Polish have a similar dish. They're all out of that area in that vicinity, and they're probably the same time, goes about back 400, 500 years. I'm not a big fan of it. You can buy it pre-made. That means it comes already pre-cooked, and you have to just heat up the content of the can, the meatballs with the cream sauce, and just get some potatoes going. It's not that great. I prefer Italian meatballs, or the Swedish meatballs, actually, which are very similar to the Swedish meatballs in the cream sauce. But they're a little bit different. It's a different recipe. I haven't had Königsberger Klopse in a long time. Like I said, it's not one of my favorite things. I like the meatballs, especially the Italian meatballs with Italian sausage. It is by far more tasty, especially when you put them in a frying pan, and you make them nice brown on the outside, and you have a nice tomato sauce with it. Same idea, it's just different, but I prefer Italian meatballs, actually, and a meatball sub anytime over Königsberger Klopse. I had it. My grandmothers made it. Every time we came to visit, we had Königsberger Klopse. And both recipes were the same. Some may use a little bit more salt. One grandmother, the other one maybe a little bit more pepper. But the sardine or the anchovies was the same, the veal was the same, and everything was the same. And my mother made it the same way too. God bless her heart. And so I had more than enough. I had my fair share of Königsberger Klopse. That at home, growing up since I can think, that I had enough Königsberger Klopse, just believe me. So now it's time for Italian meatballs and that sort of stuff, you know. And with that, I wish you a wonderful evening.